Hi there, I'm Mistal Godlewski, an American girl who called the cornfields of Illinois home until over 10 years ago when I started navigating the chaos of life overseas. If you've ever felt that itch for something more, that whisper telling you to break free from the ordinary, you're in the right place. This podcast is your backstage pass to the wild ride of moving abroad. I'm here to pull back the curtain on the real journey, sharing stories that are funny, dramatic, and sometimes downright unbelievable. We'll explore the gritty details, from battling culture shock and navigating tricky visa processes to celebrating those small victories that make it all worth it. So whether you're daydreaming about a new life abroad or already in the thick of it, grab your passport and let's explore what it really means to live life beyond borders. Welcome to Abroadly Speaking. Hey there, friend. Welcome to the Abroadly Speaking podcast. My name is Mistal. If you're new here, welcome. If you've been here before, welcome back. Today's podcast is completely unscripted, off the cuff, but I figured it kind of is helpful storytelling-wise because a lot of people recently have been asking me about jobs abroad, how I found jobs abroad, what does it mean to get a job abroad, how did you do it? So I kind of wanted to share our story in a more job-focused way. So I know in other episodes we've talked about our story, like how I had kids, and I've talked about other things, but this one I think is a really interesting opportunity to kind of understand there's different ways to get jobs abroad. It's not all linear. It's not all get sponsorship, get a visa, get abroad, right? There's different ways that these things happen. And so I just wanted to kind of walk through those with you today. As a quick aside, on the 27th of May, that's a Tuesday, it'll be about 2 weeks after this episode is released, but I'm hosting a very free, because if there's something other than free, a very free event about how what you're doing today, trying to get your job abroad, is probably not working and what you should do differently. So if you're still jobless, stateside, and stuck, this masterclass will help you figure out 3 things that you might be doing wrong that are keeping you that way and teach you what to do instead. So that's the goal for the masterclass. Registration is open. I'll drop the link in the show notes for you, but it's absolutely free to attend. It is going to be just a little bit of fun. Like I said, it's on May 27th. It'll start at 2 p.m. Eastern, which is 11 a.m. Pacific, and figure out your time zones from there. It'll be just a class where I'll show you the ins and outs of finding a job abroad in a meaningful way, let's say. So I hope to see you there. If you're catching this much later on, after the 27th of May of 2025, reach out to me on Instagram and I will happily tell you what the next free course is and or what else I have available for you, for example. So I hope that's cool for you. And with that, let's get on with the storytelling. If you have some popcorn, you may want it. It's got some twists and turns. So if you've been around for a while, you may know that I first moved abroad in 2013. We moved in December, technically, of 2013. It was my husband, myself, and our 2 cats. We packed up our lives in Cary, North Carolina, and moved across the ocean to Basel, Switzerland. Now, the reason I'm saying all that is because it's important to understand where I came from and where we are now. We are back in Switzerland now, but we've made a few moves along the way. And so let's start there. It started was in 2013. I was working for a big pharma company and my job was based in North Carolina, but I was traveling frequently to Belgium. I was based in North Carolina, but traveling frequently to Belgium. And my husband was based in North Carolina in a local job. Well, fast forward a few days, and my husband in September of 2013 got a job offer to relocate to Switzerland. And we kind of looked at each other and were like, wait, what? Really? Because before that, we had looked at potentially relocating for my role in Belgium, but ruled it out for a number of different reasons at the time. And we had talked about moving abroad before. We had talked about, it would be cool if we eventually got to live abroad. But the reality of searching for jobs wasn't on our radar at the time. We weren't really looking per se to move abroad, but if something happened, we both worked in global pharma companies. There was a possibility of that to occur. Lo and behold, he got a job offer in September. Well, that kind of put us on a time clock because I was going to have to find some work, right? Because for me, working was really important. It was just the 2 of us at the time. We didn't have children. I loved what I did at the time. I was enjoying my job a lot. And I thought, oh no, what do we do? I don't want to go searching for a new job. I don't want to find a new company to work for. I have been in this role for less than 2 years. It's really exciting. It's really different. What should I do? And so what we ended up doing was I talked to the HR team, the human resources team at my company and said, hey, look, every month you are sending me to Belgium for meeting. You are spending $5,000 or $6,000 a month to shoot me over the ocean on a plane, of course, but to send me over the ocean, I should say, for meetings in Europe, in Belgium specifically. I'm traveling a lot. I'm away from home a lot. And every Friday during this period while I was living in North Carolina, at 4 a.m., I was getting up for calls in French that were occurring in Belgium that I needed to participate in. Now, number one, I don't speak French fluently. And number two, 4 a.m. is really awfully freaking early for a meeting. But it was the expected thing. It was what needed to be done. It was what my job entailed. And I said, hey, instead of spending $5,000 a month, which was cheap because that's just the plane ticket, right? You're spending $60,000 or more a year to send me to meetings, not including hotel costs, not including everything else. Maybe, what do you think of me moving to Switzerland? I do not need you to sponsor my visa. I don't need you to cover any relocation costs. You can give me the equivalent salary. I don't need a raise in salary other than cost of living adjustment. That's it. I'm not asking for anything extra. I'm not asking for anything except to be able to do my job in Switzerland. The company did some digging around and they found that they had a local, like there's no manufacturing here. There's no offices here. There's really just a sales office. And they said, hey, yeah, you can work remotely out of the sales office, meaning you can work from home. If you need IT support, if you need something, you would have to go to the sales office, which was like 4 hours away by train. But everything else, you're good to go. Here you go. And they agreed and they let me move abroad. Now, the reason why is because I gave them a very good reason for letting me move. They did have offices in the country, sort of, that I could work through. So they could give me a contract from that office, so to speak. And I showed them how it saved them money. Now I was on the same time zone, so I could attend more meetings regularly. I could arrive and they didn't have to pay for two different overnights because they would pay for an international flight and then they would pay for an overnight typically at the beginning of my trip before I got into the office and an overnight at the end of my trip before I could fly home. Well, now they were saving those 2 nights because I could arrive at an 8 a.m. I could arrive from a 6 a.m. flight to the office by 8 o'clock. So they saved the previous night. And then at the end, I would fly home on Friday, for example, at 5 p.m. and everything was good. So they saved a lot of money overall. And I could show that to them. Also, by negotiating and saying, I don't need a relocation package. I don't need you to sponsor my visa. I don't need you to do any of the traditional things of moving someone abroad. That gave them a reason and the ability to do it for me. The lesson of this and the moral, let's say, of this story is if you don't ask, the answer is always no. But if you do ask and you can come with legitimate, very good reasons why it makes sense for you to do that, why wouldn't they consider it, right? Why wouldn't they say yes in the long run? And I think it's really important for you to acknowledge that and to understand, okay, I work for a global company or I work for a company with resources globally. How can I make a case for why relocation makes sense for me and my family? Say you work for a company in Japan and you're on calls at 8 p.m. every night so that you're in their time zone and you're, traveling frequently to a specific location or to a number of locations. That's a great reason to request the relocation to that location, right? So just to consider that. Fast forward a couple of years, my husband's company got acquired by the company that I was working for. And they said, oh, you get to move to Belgium. And we both said, no, not what we want to do. Again, it just wasn't the right move for the two of us. And so both of us started looking for jobs. Now, we already had visas for the country, for Switzerland at the time. So we didn't need Swiss visa support per se. They do have to annually sign our visas, but they don't have to give us support for it. And both of us applied. We adapted our resumes. We adapted our cover letters to the Swiss standards. We both found new roles and were happy in them. And then in 2017, my husband was traveling extensively back and forth to Vienna for his job. And eventually the company said, hey, how about instead of traveling back and forth, you move to Vienna. In the meantime, he had had job offers to move to other places within Europe, specifically Northern Germany. He also had an offer to move somewhere in France. We had that offer potentially to move in Belgium. And each time we weighed the opportunity to move versus where we were in our lives. We looked at some of the considerations we had were, can I find a job? If he's getting relocated, can I find a job or vice versa, right? So whoever's getting relocated, can the other one find a job in that region? Is it possible? Is it the lifestyle that we want? Is it the people that we want to be around? Is there, for example, for us, my husband is an absolute avid skier. So do they have skiing around? Can he go skiing in the winter? Do they have weather that we like? Is it raining all the time and we can't get outside? Those are things that we considered when we made decisions to pass up job offers to relocate in the one versus the ones that we took. So my husband got a great opportunity in his career to relocate to Vienna, but I literally had just had a baby, like a month-old baby in my arms. And my husband's like, guess what? We're moving to Vienna. Of course, he didn't say it like that. He said, would you be willing to move? And I said, sure, let's get on a plane. But things were a little bit more complicated. His company was not going to sponsor my work visa. They would only sponsor me on a residence visa, which is great, except that I wanted to work. Say what you will about whether kids should go to daycare or not. My mental health needed me to be productive and in a job at some kind. And yet I didn't have visa sponsorship. And we couldn't get even my residence permit and residence visa until we had an apartment. And it was just this really complicated, convoluted situation. So my husband got his visa in November of 2017. Again, my daughter was only 3 months old. We had just gotten her passport by the time that my husband relocated to Vienna, leaving us in Switzerland. I wanted to find a job when I moved to Vienna. And so I looked for, now again, I work in big pharma. I looked for big pharma companies in and around Austria that had places that I could work, right? I needed global pharmaceutical companies because at the time I was not German speaking in any way, shape, or form. I could get by in some basic German, but I was not very fluent in German at the time. So I needed a role that could be primarily English speaking, and I needed a role that was somewhere within a reasonable distance of where we were moving. By then, we knew where our apartment would be. We also needed to be able to then find daycare for our daughter. So I needed some flexibility in that. As a side note, in Austria, parents get 12 months of maternity or paternity leave. And most people don't send their kids to daycare until they're at least a year old. And even then, it's usually two. So most moms or a combination of mom and dad stay home for 2 years with their children. So finding a daycare spot was also contingent upon it, right? So I needed to find a job and a daycare spot. If I could only find a job, but I couldn't find a daycare spot, we would be in trouble. So I started Googling a lot of global pharma companies in Austria. I started looking at, for example, LinkedIn for jobs that were available in the area. I did a bunch of research for different roles and different jobs and companies that I could potentially work for as a native English speaker in Vienna. I applied for, I think, 5 or 6 roles. Before applying, of course, I tailored my CV, my curriculum vitae, to the local requirements. Please note that in Europe, the resume thing is not really a thing. It's not the word they use. Most people would call it a CV. So I readjusted my CV to meet Austrian format versus Swiss format. Definitely no longer US format. I provided the necessary information. I wrote a cover letter that was specific to the job that I was applying for. And I addressed the fact that I had a residence permit, a residency visa, but I did not have a work visa. I would need sponsorship for my work visa in my cover letter. So I made it blatantly clear, if you want to hire me, this is what it's going to take. You don't have to move me. You don't have to relocate me. You don't have to pay for any of that. But I definitely need you to sign off for me to get a work visa because I can't do it without a job offer. So in Austria, you need a job offer to get a work visa. And it goes together hand in hand. So I made sure that they were clear that I didn't already have a visa in place and that I would need one. And I applied, I think, to 4 or 5 roles. I got a call back for a couple of them. I had interviews and I finally landed a job. We moved in February of 2018. We packed up our house in Basel and moved to Vienna. And I started working in May of 2018 for the company that I was working for at the time. Because it took a little time to find a daycare, we already had one scheduled, but she needed to integrate, things needed to happen. And I just decided to wait until the 1st of May to start. So it worked out really well for us. And my company ended up sponsoring the visa. And part of it, and I just want to kind of give you an aside on why companies are hesitant to sponsor visas, it costs them literally a crap ton of money because they outsource all of that to third parties. So, for example, Fragment is a great company that does a lot of that relocation stuff for you. They do the paperwork, they help you make sure you fill it out correctly, all that kind of stuff. Well, my company theoretically would have to pay Fragment to do all that for them. And then they would pay, for example, for your plane tickets, and they pay for your housing costs, and they pay for 3 months for you for short-term rentals. There's a lot of negotiations that go on in relocation packages. And it's a lot of work for their HR team and their relocation team to actually physically relocate you from where you are. And unless you are a unicorn candidate who is just amazing at what you do, many companies are going to be like, I don't want to spend 100 grand on you before I ever get a single hour of work out of you. Holy moly, that's crazy. So that's a big reason why you often won't see people hiring abroad, right? That's the reason why you need to, in your resume and in your cover letter and in your, let's call it a CV, we'll quit using resume today. In your CV and your cover letter, you need to highlight why you are that unicorn. Why should they invest hundreds, potentially of thousands of dollars in you before you even do a day of work for them? In your job contract that you'll get when you move abroad, you're likely going to have some sort of clause that if you leave within a certain period of time, typically 12 to 24 months, that you would have to pay back a portion of your relocation bonus, right? That you would have to pay back a portion of whatever the company invested in you. So they're investing in the longer term. The 100 grand, for example, to move you is investing in a longer term contract, but it's just something to consider, right? You want to make sure that you understand that before you sign contracts. Well, fast forward now to 2020. My husband had accomplished a lot in his role, but was ready to move on to a new one potentially. And I was also kind of ready to move on from my role as well. Fast forward to later that year, my company had gone through an acquisition the prior year, and my job was eliminated. So I needed to find a new role within the company or somewhere else if I wanted to continue working. So we decided to look for roles. Specifically, I looked for roles that would give me the opportunity potentially to move back to Switzerland. While we enjoyed living in Vienna and it's a beautiful place to live, we had that 10,000 euro tax mistake that you can fly back in the previous episodes and learn about. We made a 10,000 euro tax mistake that we had to pay, and that was crazy, and we weren't very happy about it. We were very, very happy with healthcare options. My daughter's school, I cannot say enough great things about the school that she attended and the daycare/school she attended in Vienna when she started turning 2. It was amazing, but we both missed Switzerland. We both felt the calling to go back to Switzerland. We knew we wouldn't be going back to the same life as before, but we really, really wanted the feel that we had there. I applied for a role that would allow us to move back to Switzerland, and lo and behold, I got it. In December of 2020, we packed up our whole house in Austria in the middle of the second lockdown and moved back to Switzerland. My husband, shortly thereafter, was able to get a job at another company as well. And now, almost 5 years later, we're still here. The reason why we were able to move each time was we were able to make conscientious decisions of what we needed in relocation packages, for example, what we would be able to do without if we were moving. We didn't need certain things or we didn't want certain things. And so we gave concessions in those to the company to enable them to make it more worth their while to hire us. We gave them reasons why we were the best candidates, why each of us in various resources were the best candidates for the role. I was the best candidate because X, Y, and Z. This is the reason why you want me to hire, this is the reason you want to hire me because I bring this particular unique asset to the role that you're not going to find somebody locally to do. So each time that we applied and got new roles, we were able to show I'm a unicorn. I'm very good. I'm the key person you want for this role because. And I think that that's something that we need to work on and acknowledge in both our CVs and our our CVs and our cover letters. We can't just say, yay, I'm a great candidate anymore. The very keyword heavy resume that you send out in the US is not the same very keyword heavy CV you're going to send out in Europe or in whatever country you want to move to. Be aware that the formatting is different on a CV versus a resume. Be aware what kind of CV is expected in the location that you're applying in. Some countries want the reverse chronological current job to the first job you ever had in high school. Some companies only want you to list relevant experience. Some countries want you to list key skills first, and then kind of just say, these are the various companies I work for. Some companies want you to provide reference letters, or countries specifically want you to provide reference letters. These are not here's my list of 6 references, call them at will. This is actual company letterhead reference letters that say, these are the things that you did. These are the experiences that you've had. This is how amazing you are, yada, 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 right? Those are things that when you apply for a role, especially as an American or especially as a foreigner into another foreign country, you need to address those things and you need to make sure that you've given thought to those things. In between our big moves, we've applied for and gotten other jobs, and we've applied for and gotten rejected for other jobs, right? It doesn't guarantee, just because you're already in the country doesn't guarantee that you're going to get a new role. It's not that it makes it that simple. It does make it somewhat simpler, but it's not always that simple. All right, my friend, I think that's it for this episode. Those are the different ways that I found that moving abroad worked for us. Those are ways that I found jobs. Of course, there's other ways as well. During the masterclass, Still Jobless, Stateside and Stuck, we'll talk through some of the things that you may be doing that you don't realize that can impact your ability to get a job abroad. Like I said, the link to register is in the show notes. It's going to be live on the 27th of May. If you're unable to make it live, of course, you can catch the replay, but there'll be special bonuses for those people who make it live. And yeah, I think that's it for today. I hope this episode was helpful. Have a look at the show notes for the link to register for the masterclass. And as always, if there's questions, anything that I can help with, feel free to reach out to me on Instagram at I am Estelle. And I look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Thanks for tuning in to Broadly Speaking. If today's episode got you dreaming a little bigger or thinking a little braver, go ahead and hit subscribe, leave a review, or share it with someone who's ready for their own adventure. And hey, don't be a stranger. Come hang out with me over on Instagram at I am Estelle for the real, unfiltered life abroad. Keep that passport handy, and remember, life's too short to stay in one place.